All right, we'll call the December 12th Lakeshore Hospital Authority Board of Trustees meeting to order. Are there any staff or trustee additions or deletions to the agenda or consent agenda?
Staff has no additions or deletions, Mr. Chair.
None, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
I have something I'd like to talk about that isn't on the agenda.
Okay,
Vacation days around the holidays.
Okay.
Okay, can I just add that under new business?
can we take action on that since it's not?
I think we could discuss it, but not any action without it being properly noticed on the agenda.
Okay. So we'll,
That's what I'm asking is, can we put it on the agenda?
well, I think we can,
We haven't adopted it yet.
Right,
Right.
I think we can discuss it,
Advertise it.
but it wasn't on the agenda for possible action.
so we'll discuss it and then at the next meeting, we can.
I'll only do anything next meeting. What I'm saying is we haven't adopted the agenda, so can it be added? If it was Dale saying it, you would add it.
Oh, no.
I don't think we can act on it without it being properly noticed. Agreed.
I mean, certainly you can discuss it. And it may take care of itself that way, but
So we'll add that to the bottom of new business. We have a motion to adopt the agenda. As amended.
Motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
A motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the motion carries. Public comments, Ms. Lindley.
If you haven't done so in a while, trustees, read chapter 189. These are the statutes that apply to special districts. Special districts will comply with the laws, rules of the state of Florida. Like I said, if you haven't read it recently, you need to. You need to read the Constitution. The authority cannot give money to a for-profit. If you, as a trustee, have a question about giving money to a profit, read some AG opinions or ask the board attorney for an opinion. Over 100 years ago, in 1918, the Florida Supreme Court in Van Pelt versus Hilliard found it as a fundamental principle of statutory construction that where the language of a statute is plain and unambiguous, there's no occasion for judicial interpretation. The legislature must be understood to mean what is plainly expressed. The legislative intent being plainly expressed, that intent should prevail, for that in fact is the word of the legislature. The established law is clear. And this is clear, chapter 2005-315, House Bill 999, section 3, legislation concerning the governing body states, one member shall be a physician engaged in the practice of medicine at the Lakeshore Hospital. This board is illegally constituted per the enabling legislation. Since there's no hospital, therefore there cannot be a board member engaged in the practice of medicine. You, as a trustee, took an oath of office. Now it's time for you, as a trustee, to uphold that oath. It's time to ask the attorney for his opinion on what actions you should take. It might also be advisable to have an AGO opinion on the board, since there's no hospital, if there's no board member, it's not legally constituted. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lindley. Any other further comments? Mr. Ward?
Mr. Chairman and board members, I don't quite know what your policy is on how to address these items on the agenda. You know, every board does it differently, but I see under new business, I see at least 3 things that are very striking to me. Are we going to discuss those as they come up, or that's the opportunity to say something about them now?
This is the opportunity.
I guess I'm confused. I mean, attended quite a few meetings as we've discussed, Hope Bridges. I mean, I didn't even know Hope Bridges was even something that we were even, I thought that was a chapter that was closed. That's the first thing I want to mention. The second thing that I want to mention, I thought that, at least with my understanding through communication with others, that Meridian Behavior Healthcare outreach efforts was a no-go unless there's been a change of mind on their behalf of going out in the community to ask whether or not the community wants such a facility in this particular community. So I don't know if that changed, and I see that on the agenda. And one thing that I'm definitely, as a Black American and ancestors and everything, I just would not believe that the discussion of the Auth Festival using property for anything dealing with treason and brother killing brother in the South, wanting to keep Black people in slavery, that we even gonna discuss that particular topic as number 2 on the new business. I would find it offensive, and I think that any Black male that lives in this community finds the Auth everything offensive and very insensitive to who we are as a people and what has been done to us over the years. And we're still dealing with a lot of disparity, and we're still dealing with a lot of issues just because of the color of our skin that we find to be very unfortunate. And it really goes against the whole ideal that we're all equal in the sight of God. Thank you.
Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the motion carries. New business. Jules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item deals with the conversation the trustees had at their last meeting, where it was discussed as to what the actual vote had been as to whether to discontinue negotiations with Hope Bridges or not. And this resulted from the way it was characterized in the minutes. So at the last meeting, it was discussed. We were directed to place it on the agenda, but it's far more of a legal interpretation than it is administrative. And so I have asked Mr. Kennon if he would please offer his opinion regarding the subject.
All right, generally, municipal entities, county commission type entities, they're required, their bodies are required to vote unless they have a conflict of interest. The question was, what is the effect of Florida Statute 286.012, which says, and I'm not gonna read the whole thing, no member of any state, county, or municipal governmental board, commission, or agency who is present at any meeting of any such body at which an official decision, ruling, or other official act is to be taken may abstain from voting with regard to any such decision, ruling, or act, and a vote shall be recorded or counted for each member. The Attorney General has opined that section 286 does not apply to a taxing district such as ours. That opinion specifically dealt with a fire island fire control district, but made clear that it also would apply to us, and essentially opined that the sections in 1112, which prohibit you from voting if you or family members are going to have a personal gain, is a prohibition against voting, whereas 286 is a mandate to vote, and 286 does not apply to a taxing district such as ours. So from a statutory point of view, there's no authority to say that each member shall vote. Attorney General went on to opine that, however, each of the districts are free to adopt whatever rules or policies they wish, as long as it didn't go afoul of state law as to their voting procedures. So looking at the history, here, 2013, we had amended and restated bylaws that did not specifically address the issue it talked about. And made clear that we need 4 members for a quorum. The chair doesn't vote unless there's a tie, and then the only other section that deals with voting indicates that you can have a voice vote unless one member requests a roll call vote. Then in look at the date here. August the 8th of 2022, the Lakeshore Hospital Authority meeting rules and procedures were adopted by the board. And of note there, it says in chapter 7A or section 7A, all authority trustees in attendance except the chair shall vote on all issues unless legally abstaining. The chair or the vice chair presiding in his or her absence shall not be entitled to vote upon any matter before the authority, except when the votes cast shall be evenly divided. So here we did have, Ms. Chancey, under that rule of procedure, was required to vote. She didn't, as I understand from the last meeting. We have no policy or procedure as to whether that would count as an affirmative vote or negative vote. It being a no vote, it was 2-0, which is not a majority of the quorum. If it was determined to be a no vote, it'd be 2-1 without a majority. And so the only way that motion would have passed would be had she voted affirmatively, or if we had a policy or procedure that abstaining from voting would constitute an affirmative vote, or a policy that it would constitute a negative vote. We don't have any such policy. So from a legal standpoint, the better practice on that particular motion is that it failed. And the board can look at something in the future, such as changing the manner in which the chair votes. Back in the day when it was adopted, there was a 7-person trustee. It kind of made sense that you had one that controlled the masses, so to speak, up at the chambers, and but when we have 4 members as we do now, it may make sense to have the chair vote, or in the alternative, amend the policies and procedures for meeting rules to establish that an abstain, that if you do abstain, it will count as an affirmative or a negative vote. So if you do abstain, contrary to the rules and procedures, you'll know at least how that will be recorded in the records.
I don't want to push you on the spot. Do you know how other municipalities or other boards typically do it?
I did not have time to find the Attorney General opinion. It came up in a City of Lake City issue, but I can find it. I know I know where it's at generally in my mess. But my recollection is that the Attorney General in that opinion indicated that the statute doesn't read as requiring a governing body to treat it as an affirmative or a negative. So, which would lead to the same discussion here, is you could have your own policies and procedures as to how you wish that type of instance to occur. Now, your municipality, the 1-1 or the 286 applies.
So, in other words, something we should be thinking about how we want to, if we want to amend our rules. Yep. To say how an abstention would count.
Well, right now, you're technically required not to abstain under the current policies and procedure, but if someone.
Unless you have a conflict.
And yes, unless you had a declared conflict under chapter 1112, a personal gain conflict is where we generally see it. So if we had somebody that did not vote for whatever reason, then you could have a policy or procedure as to how you're going to treat it, whether yay or nay, or you could expand the number of persons allowed to vote. So worst case scenario, you'd have a 2-2 tie. But now you're kind of stuck with a 3-0 to take any action.
Meaning on any motion that we have, it's gonna have to have a 3-0.
That's correct.
Or if
That's the majority.
even if someone abstains from voting.
Correct.
And if it was split 1-1, yes and no, and the chair were to vote, it would still not be a
Well, you
majority.
would have a quorum if you
Right.
Unless you again, an abstaining member.
And
So
if I might, go ahead, Ms. Jansen.
do we just need to revote this?
You could bring the motion back up.
Well, and that's the reason why I asked that it be put back on the agenda is because my main concern is that I attended several of the negotiation meetings with Hope Bridges. And Mr. Powell, Mr. Coberline, and Mr. Williams were in attendance to all three of them. They spent a tremendous amount of time on the issue with Hope Bridges. And I've only been on this board for 1 year and I've heard the name Hope Bridges every meeting that I've been to. And Mr. Beal brought up the issue about us ceasing any communication with Hope Bridges. And I would like to give our executive director some guidance on how much time he and effort that he and Mr. Powell and now Mr. Kennan should spend with Hope Bridges, because I think it's quite obvious that we're not going to get anywhere with Hope Bridges. And that's the reason why I seconded the motion that was proposed on November 1st that Mr. Beal had, which states, and I might read here that Mr. Beal, motion by Mr. Beal to discontinue negotiation with Hope Bridges. And I second the motion. And I think the reason why there was some confusion is that because at that meeting on November 1st, Hope Bridges was now bringing in Ace Medical as a possible solution. And I think that maybe that confused the issue, but I don't have any problems if Ace Medical wants to come and talk to Mr. Williams. But I think that anybody that's head up by primary leadership, meaning Hope Bridges, that we need to tell Mr. Williams just to cease any and all communication. Unless Mr. Powell has another opinion, because I know was at all of these meetings also and spent a lot of time and effort on negotiating with Hope Bridges. So.
No, I don't have anything to add. Positive thing.
I didn't mean to be so long-winded, Mr. Chairman,
You're good.
but I would like to hear from Ms. Chancey.
Ms. Chancey.
I would like to hear the proposal from Ace Medical / Hope Bridges. Because there's a good possibility it would be something much firmer and that some more people would believe in.
I think if we did that, it would be another 6 months of spinning wheels. And I think
Well,
Powell would still have his reserves.
With a limit.
We tried that. We told them we wanted it by the next meeting and they couldn't get it. So I just think I think we can continue spinning the wheels.
Am I the only one that sees that there's a possible, why would we want to put Ace Medical in there in their capacity that they proposed, and then also have, and of course, I haven't getting ahead of myself on the agenda here because I don't know what the negotiations are looking like with doctors Michael and Molly White, but having the Whites right within 50 yards or less of that same facility, would that be kind of defeating our purpose? Or
I think you're right on that. We hadn't really considered them at the time that.
well, we were back on November 1st because that's when that was on the agenda that night
Yeah.
to negotiate whether to go forward with them. And then I think Mr. Beal made that motion. And I understand what you're saying. If Ace Medical, like I said, if Ace Medical wants to come back and talk to Mr. Williams, Mr. Kennan, and Mr. Powell, I don't have any problems with that. But
Now,
I think we need to cease and desist. But
there are non-emergency facilities. And if the Whites are taking care of emergencies, I mean, there's a possibility of working those things out.
Stuff regardless. I
I
mean,
mean,
Are they even talking to you? Are they still in are they, Dallas, are you still getting feedback from Ace and Hope Bridges?
No, I have not spoke to either party since the November 1st meeting where the board voted to discontinue. I have had no conversation.
I'm not gonna quote the fellow that runs Ace Medical, but I believe every time he's been here, he's sworn that was the last time.
Sharma,
That gentleman.
Fat lady's saying it's over.
Sharma.
And I think if it was me thinking this, if I knew that there was a possibility to get my foot in the door, or if Ace really wanted to be here, they probably would have placed a phone call by now. Or something. But he's told us twice he's not coming back.
He's told me once, because I wasn't here the first time.
Yeah. When he made it clear the first time, he made it clear the second time. I at the tune of however many tens of $1,000s a month, we gotta wait on it. That's tough. That's really tough. And especially if it's gonna be a hybrid partnership that will probably conflict heavily with our agreement with the Whites.
Again, Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to make a motion that we no longer communicate / negotiate with Hope Bridges, period.
Motion,
I'd second that.
second. Any further discussion? I'm gonna request we do a roll call vote.
Good.
We don't talk about this next month. Jansen,
Now,
Kennedy,
Yes,
Mr. Douglas.
Yes,
So Bell's 2-1. So we're still in the same situation, but I'll say that my thoughts haven't changed any. I think that we should not. So I think just off consensus, that gives Mr. Williams enough to know that if he were to continue negotiations, that it would not be fruitful because it probably wouldn't pass. Fair assumption.
fair enough.
Move on to item number 2, Mr. Williams, Blue Gray Army.
Yes, sir.
And I'm sorry, before we go on, should we have maybe schedule a workshop at the beginning of next year to discuss rules? Or put it on the agenda? And that's really has to be a workshop, discuss proposed rule changes on voting matters. We only have 4 members currently, and
I can come up with proposed language on either option as option 1, how to treat a abstaining vote, and number 2, whether we want to expand the voting pool. Maybe put that on the agenda for next month and look at the proposed language and we go from there.
Yeah.
like doing it. All right, item number 2.
Annually, the authority receives a request from the Blue Gray Army to utilize Blue Gray Army properties in the vicinity of the festival. As you can tell, I've notified the Blue Gray that we pretty much have transferred those to the city. I don't think that you have in the lots that they're interested in, that you have any current legal standing or right to make the call. So I responded to Faye and told Faye she would need to make a request of the city. And I don't know where the status of that is. The only thing outside of the lots that they normally park on would be like the paved parking areas and all at the hospital, which they traditionally do not use. But all the lots back here and to the west of us, the ones on the front, they're all included in the city agreement. So unless I'm just completely misreading this, I really think this is more of a city request to decide than it is a trustee request.
So no actions necessarily needed tonight.
Unless for some reason y'all wanted them to be able to use the paved parking areas or something, but all the undeveloped property was all included in that transfer to the city. Those are the lots they typically use.
And an abundance of caution, does it hurt to have them listed as an additionally insured on the day of?
Have who?
Blue gray, even though they're not technically parking on our stuff, I don't know, if someone, out of curiosity.
If they're not our lots, it wouldn't do us any good.
Right, that's
But are you saying if somebody parks in one of the paid parking lots?
showing up for the festival to do festival things.
Todd, where you will know, the city requested from the trustees these undeveloped lots within a specific area for a potential location of a new city hall. They have not transferred those properties back, so they still have a legal right to use them as long as they meet the conditions of the agreement. I have approached the city some months back. They wanted to wait until they had a full council seated. They wanted to wait till they had went through a budgetary process and that they knew more about what they were doing. I do know, as you know, they are still discussing their options because at the last meeting, they were talking about getting the current city hall reevaluated. So I'll be glad to go back anytime you want me to and ask for the lots back, but they have not yet made a final decision from what I can see.
Got a reverter clause, and I wasn't at the last city meeting, but I watched it and I know that they're still discussing their options.
Yeah.
It sounds like they're at least moving on it.
Moving, yeah.
So, yeah.
Slowly but moving.
Any other comments?
They get to pay the taxes on them.
That's right.
Yeah,
All right, update on the contract for Ian Pals.
Is there anything y'all want me to send the city or to Faye, anything to say or do, or just leave it silent? I mean, we've already said you've got to get permission from the city. We good? Okay.
Update on the contract with Ian Pals.
This, of course, is Doctors White and White, Michael and Molly. I think the best way for me to update you on the MPALS agreement is about 2 weeks ago, we had some expected material come from the Whites, which was sort of a quote rough draft of an agreement, and it included provisions that they wish to see. I spoke to Dick, and of course, I spoke to Fred at the time, but our idea was to get together, review it amongst ourselves, and then call for a meeting to start discussing it point by point. Now, unfortunately, what happened, and this is not an excuse, it's just an explanation. I got called out of town, and I also had a number of funerals I had to attend in the last 10 days. So that kind of slowed things up. But I did speak today with Dr. Michael White. I told him that I would ask Todd to give me dates that he would be available. I'll cross-reference those with Dick's calendar. We will get the initial review done. And once that's done, it's really a matter of negotiating each point. Each point. That's kind of the way the process is working.
Assuming you haven't seen Mr. Kennan's schedule yet, do you think we'll have?
Well, unless Mr. Kennan has changed, what Mr. Kennan told me to do was to schedule and let him know. And if there was any way he could make it, he would be there. And if I've misunderstood that, then he can correct me. But I do think it's beneficial to have one trustee in those meetings.
And I can, some things I can move, some litigation stuff I can't, but if trying to coordinate 3 or 4 calendars would just be impossible, and it's a situation to where I'm gonna get with Dale and get the materials, go over them. He and I can meet on them, have my point of view for the meeting if for some reason I'm not able to be there or reschedule. And so my input could still be considered that way. And then I could follow up a day or two after that without any issue with Dale to address where we're at. So we can just,
Well, and the only legal issue that has arose since is the one that you heard of earlier in comments. So I think it's only appropriate that we make sure before anything is presented back to the trustees that we all believe that this is within the ability and the confines of our legal ability. So we will do that.
So we should have a little more in depth at the next meeting. Don't you think?
Yeah. I think so. And here again, I mean, in a nice way, I'm saying I've been more of a problem here in the past week and a half than the whites have. So I admit it.
Brinkley, can I ask a question?
All right.
Since it's. You know,
Brandon,
No, man.
I would be very interested in attending at least some of the meetings.
Well, I can't have both of you there, but certainly we can schedule to make sure that at least one of you are there.
Right here. That's great.
You know, because of my background, I am very
Absolutely.
interested in seeing what they've got.
Absolutely.
You have an update on Meridian?
I do.
I said so.
I heard all of them.
I have reached out to some in the community and I asked them what their opinion was as to how we could best and how we should address this to give everybody a fair opportunity to hear what they are proposing and to, of course, make any objections known, to ask any questions. Now, this is not in any way in final form, but what I would tell you is that the people that I spoke with would indicate that they think a single meeting is enough to get the concept out, to get the questions floated, to hear what has to be said. And then, of course, have a follow-up for any of the questions that were not answered during the hearing. And I'd like to thank Cynthia. Cynthia's helped me with this. So, but almost to the man, everybody we talked to, and these started a couple of weeks ago, forget December. And for whatever reason, they're pretty much targeting a Tuesday. I don't really know, but I mean, without having conversation amongst themselves, when I would ask, what do you think the best day of the week for this is? Tuesday. So,
No, it's not gonna be a meeting, a trustee meeting, but I know that I intend on attending. I know that others have said the same. Would it do any harm to advertise it in the paper?
no, it'll be advertised. I think it's a must that you advertise it. And, you know, we talked about getting informational flyers out to the churches and to the civic groups and you know, trying to get the word spread as best we can. There were some pretty candid comments about, you know, you've got a downtown element that wants to meet too. But everybody kind of wants to hear what everybody's concerns are. And so the thought process was combine them. Make them all one. We're not, you know, not try to have something for downtown and something elsewhere, just combine them. So that's kind of what I've heard. I have not had the chance yet to sit down and ask you what your particular comments and feelings are, but I will do that. But that will not occur until after the first of the year.
The intent would be to have a meeting with the surrounding community and the downtown community and have one meeting and then schedule a follow-up meeting for any unanswered questions or concerns.
Well, and what I did not answer, there was a comment before the meeting, how we got here. So just to remind everybody, you'll remember that we received a letter from Meridian, and the tone of the letter was taken that, hey, if you want us authority, you have to go out and justify us. And we said, no, we're not doing that. Now, if we need to get a true temperature of how the public thinks of this, that's one thing, but this is not the authority. We don't have the knowledge. We don't have the history to go out and try to sell this. So that's still not the intent. That's not what we're doing. We're going to provide a forum. I intend to kind of talk about how we got here, you know, and then, but the hard questions are going to have to come from, or the answers are going to have to come from Meridian. I don't know how to answer those. But just to remind everybody, that's how we got back here.
Mr. Williams, I assume in all reality, we're looking at probably February for this to occur.
Yeah, I think we can easily have the 2 meetings in January. But, you know, this all has to be reduced to some form of document where, you know, people can see it and understand. And of course, I fully expect all of you will attend the meetings, and what I'll do is just announce at the meetings that they shouldn't address questions to you because you can't answer. And we'll just tell them that that's out of your legal wheelhouse. You're there to observe and to hear. And I think it's important that you are there.
Have you had any other conversations in the last month with Mr. Savoy?
Actually, I have.
Okay.
And I tried to reach him today too, but I did not speak with him today.
I don't know if I'm getting the cart ahead of the horse or not. I probably am, but is there a possibility before these meetings come about that you could get with Mr. Kennan and discuss with him that if this even occurs, that we could put some strong teeth in this agreement with a bunch of reverter clause in there, Mr. Kennan? That's just a question. I'm curious to know.
Well, I mean, we can.
If they say they're gonna do X, Y, and Z, we
Yeah, we
want to
can-
hold them to X, Y, and Z, and if they don't,
Revert back.
Yes, sir.
You can do the standard reverter clause.
but I'm sure on his part, he's gonna say, well, not if we're putting several millions of dollars into the building. So we need to think
There'd be
along
a-
those lines too, outside the
A
box.
time
So,
frame of.
yes, sir. And that's what I meant, if you could
Logistically.
get with Mr. Kennan and discuss some of those, because Mr. Savoy may say, no, we're not even interested in that. But I'm kind of concerned about that,
I understand.
because I have had some people in the community mention that too.
And I'm assuming you're saying that because Mr. Savoy has said they don't intend to do any kind of drug treatment at this
Yes, sir.
facility. It's,
Yes, sir.
so if they do that or.
Yes, sir. If it's
something
strictly
else, they'll be-
as the intent that they originated with the up to 100 beds of a fully severe psychiatric / Baker Act facility with no drug and alcohol treatment, as they indicated at the meeting back at the school board. That's my concern.
I'm lost. Ain't no property out there by you done that they use?
Anything else on,
Okay, now, they had said a 100 bed, right? Facility. What did they intend to do with the rest of it?
Well,
they talked about primary care. and-
yeah, the only thing I can tell you is what they presented. They had a sort of master plan with a lot of different uses. But in conversations since, they have said, well, we don't intend to bring some of these uses to this facility, which I think is where Don
Yeah,
is coming with his question. But I think until we hear, and look, they're tweaking what they're going to say. I got all ideas. We're all going to hear something new when we do have these hearings.
because though it was a 99 bed facility. That kind of varies.
Yeah, they'd have to
Depending on
reclaim a
using.
bunch of office space to
Because
make it that many
The fourth
beds.
floor wasn't it, and part of that.
Any other discussions on this item? Vacation issue, it's changing.
I would like to know what our policy is for our employees for what Christmas being on a weekend and New Year's being on a weekend.
We,
on Sundays.
we get 2 days for Christmas by policy, and I believe the observed days are the Friday before Christmas and the Monday after Christmas because it falls on a Sunday. And I believe that New Year's observed is the Monday after New Year's.
Okay, that takes care of anything I was interested in.
Okay. Unfinished business, the discussion of possible action on the Women's Center building.
Just to remind the trustees, we discussed this at our last meeting. After discussion, you authorized 2 repairs to go ahead and begin in order to get ahead of the curve. That was the elevators and the fire suppression system. Since that time, Dwayne was supposed to look to see if these estimates were, in his opinion, still reasonable. I think he's done that. I don't think there is any current proposed changes to these estimates. And so in order to bring that facility, the facility being the Women's Center, up to the standard that it needs to be, this is basically your cost.
So on that, the only thing on that list that we had last month that I personally would like to kind of hold off on for sure is the painting of the parking lot. I don't know that we'd even be able to do that right now with supplies and everything. The other stuff, that I know that Ms. Lori had talked about, which was the elevators, fire elevators and fire system. Is that what it was? I mean, I don't have a problem with starting some of those projects. I personally would like to hold off on the painting of the parking lot. I know it's one of the bigger costs, but I don't think we'd be able to do it right now anyways, but not saying we're not gonna do it at all, but
I agree. We should probably hold off on it unless we decide we're just gonna take the dumpsters and drag them all over a brand new squeegee parking. We can do it though. I mean, 'cause it really takes drywall dust well. So that's probably a good idea.
There's another thing at the Women's Center I'd like to recommend. We have 2 pieces of equipment that I assume, I have not eyeballed them, are still in the center over there. One being the mammography unit and the other the ultrasound unit. I think we should see about selling those because within 5 years, those things go out of date. So right now, I think we could still sell them and recoup something from them.
is there anything we need to take action on that this evening, Mr. Williams?
No, I think understanding Ms. Johnson, I'm just going to see if there's a market for these and what they might bring, and then we can discuss what to do.
And if you have problem finding a market for them, I can give you some places to look.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That's it for me.
Board member comments, Ms. Chancey?
No,
Kennedy?
None other than I wish each and every one of you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And
the same.
this year has gone by quick.
Cynthia, you've been quiet over there the past few months. You got anything you want to say?
Let's just get busy, put someone over in there, so I have some clients.
Speaking of that, I do want to make a comment. I know that we're kind of waiting to see everything that happens with these buildings, but would it be too forward to maybe look at a workshop or putting it on the agenda in the first quarter of next year on how we can maybe restructure the program?
No, in fact, it's an integral component of what we're proposing to do. It kind of needs to run concurrent with your decisions. Because it's gonna have an awful lot to do with what you pay. So at some point, that has to be discussed.
Just wanted on everybody's minds that. Pal, you have anything?
Okay.
Mr. Douglas?
Do we have any target dates for the Meridian meetings?
No, Tuesday. But I don't know what day, what week.
Our next meeting is when, the 9th of January,
Yeah.
Second Monday,
second Monday? If it's. I hate to just push that indefinitely out there.
we'll have a schedule though, we'll have a calendar.
Do we need another meeting to make the dates?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I mean, you've already authorized it,
right, so you can set them when we can
right?
hit
And
them.
it's not gonna be a meeting, so you don't have to be there. I would like to be there in attendance here.
I just want to make sure they're not waiting on me to show up here to vote on the date.
Yeah.
You're good.
Schedule it at 7 and tell him 6:30.
I'll second it.
That's all I got.
Williams?
Just Merry Christmas. That's all I have.
You bring any coaches?
They're on the way, Brandon.
All right. We've exhausted the agenda, so we'll adjourn. Thank you.